Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. It's always a pleasure to come and join you and talk a little bit about the TradeStation technology. Today is a programming class. We're going to take a look at EasyLanguage and see how you can modify existing studies and create some of your own. The title of today's presentation is Create Simple Custom Radar Screen Indicators using EasyLanguage. We've done a series of presentations in the past, and we've looked at charting indicators. I think that's the one we did last time. And today, I decided that we were going to focus on RadarScreen and how you can make some modifications to RadarScreen studies to make them a little bit more informative and a little bit more telling in terms of what the outlook is in the market. But before we get started, let's go through some disclosures that are required on every presentation. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable for everyone, and past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. For additional information on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information. The link is right there in the PowerPoint slide. We also have some links to the options disclosure and the futures disclosure if you need to learn more about those. All right, I don't have a lot of content here on the PowerPoint slide, so I'm going to jump right into the TradeStation platform and get into the development environment, because we're going to create an indicator and modify a few things on TradeStation so that you can see how easy it is for you to take something that we supply on TradeStation and make it your own. Let me switch over to my TradeStation platform first, and let's take a look at an indicator and how we can modify it. I'm going to go here to my radar screen. Here it is. All right, let me just open this up. I'm going to load a symbol list here. So I'm going to go to data, add a symbol list, and I'm just going to add the NASDAQ 100. Perfect. In addition to that, I'm going to click on the plus here to add a new study. And the study that I wanted to look at today is the moving average two-line study, something simple, straightforward that we can all understand and relate to. Remember that the focus here is to see some of the modifications we can do to built-in studies to make them a little bit more enhanced. You want to make sure that you have a better visual of that study so that it helps you in your analysis. Moving average, 2 lines. I'm going to add it to my list of studies, and I'm going to move it down just to the very end of my list of columns, and then I'm just going to click OK. All right, so that's how the moving average 2-line study looks like when you add it to a radar screen window. It's not very telling in the sense that you don't know if the stock that you're looking at is bearish or bullish, so you're not really sure what the moving average is telling you. You don't really have a sense of when those lines crossed, or if they're going to cross very soon, if they're getting closer to each other, if they're getting farther apart from each other. What you see here on this moving average 2-line study is the calculated value of each one of the lines. So if you look at the very top symbol here in my list, Exelon Corp, symbol EXC, you can see how the fast average is 36 and the slow average is 35.97. One of the things that I always explain in my radar screen classes is that the calculated values that you see here on this moving average 2-line study are based on this historical time frame. So this is using 5-minute bars in order to calculate those two averages. If you want to modify that calculation or that parameter, you have to go here into the symbol column. You change the time frame on the symbol column. So I'm going to highlight the column by just clicking on the symbol header. And once I have the column highlighted, I just click on time frame, and I'm just going to switch my radar screen to daily. So now you can see how the moving average 2-line gets recalculated, because now it's using the closing prices of daily bars, and you can see that Exelon now has a fast average of 35.41 and its low average of 34.77. So you see how the calculation changes based on the interval supplied here on this list. Can we add an alert or object to the cross on the moving average ribbon indicator? We sure can. Those are some of the things that we can definitely work on. Let me continue on this particular study, and then we can maybe take a look at the moving average ribbon indicator. I'm sure the moving average ribbon indicator already has an alert built in. We may have to look in there and see what the built-in alert is and see if we can make any modifications. The same here for the moving average to line. All studies in TradeStation have default alert criteria. And I'm sure, without looking at it, I'm sure that the alert here for the moving average to line is going to be the crossover of those two lines. So if the two lines cross, then we get an alert on this indicator. In addition to having my radar screen here on the left, I'm going to set up a chart here on the right-hand side. I always do that when I'm looking at a radar screen so that I can click on any symbol that I want to do some further analysis on. And I already have my chart set up for that. So let me go ahead and resize it so that it fills this open space on the right-hand side. I'm gonna change the time frame on this chart to daily so that it matches my radar screen. And I'm going to go to studies, add study, and add the same study that I have here on my radar screen, which is the moving average to line. There it is. Okay, so one of the things that we have talked about is that, yeah, we can turn on the alert here on the moving average to line. We've done that in multiple classes here at TradeStation. But the indicator itself doesn't tell you in which direction those moving averages are crossing. For example, if I look at this symbol that I loaded here on my chart, CTVA, I know that the moving averages are kind of bullish. Why do I say kind of bullish? Because I see the cyan line above the magenta, meaning that it's in a bullish mode. However, the moving averages are kind of getting closer to each other. So there is likelihood that the averages will cross. Now, by looking at CTVA here on my radar screen, which I don't see it because it's not there. So let me go ahead and try. Is it there? Let me go ahead and see CTVA. No, it's not part of my list here. So let me choose something that is. I'm going to link my chart to my radar screen so that if I click on a symbol here, it switches. Let me click on Costco here. All right, so Costco, similar behavior. We have a bullish mode on those moving averages. The moving averages are kind of separating from each other, but it's not until I pull up a chart that I know that Costco is on a bullish mode. Of course, I can take a look at the two numbers here and see which one's bigger. You can see how the fast is higher than the slow, but it does require a little bit more of focus, a little bit more attention to those numbers to realize if something bullish or bearish. So to my help, I usually like to modify indicators so that it provides me a better visual. It'd be great for me to know if these symbols are on a bearish or a bullish mode based on which of the moving averages is higher or lower. And these are the type of things that you can do inside of EasyLanguage to make your indicators better on your platform. And of course, you can do this on any study that TradeStation supplies, and even create indicators of your own, which we're going to do next, right after I modify this indicator. Let me go ahead and take a look at the EasyLanguage of this indicators. I'm going to right-click and go to Studies. And on the Studies menu, you do find an option here that says Edit EasyLanguage for moving average to lines. I'm going to go in there. All right, so this opens up the EasyLanguage code for this default indicator. Rather than, here the font is a little bit too big. Let me go ahead and make the font a little bit smaller. Okay. One of the things that I do before I modify any EasyLanguage is I create a copy of it. And you're going to see that that's going to be very useful, because if it gets to a point where you've completely modified the original indicator, you have a way of going back to the original one. You know, if I don't save a copy, if I don't create a copy, I'm making modifications on the original document, and then I won't have the ability to go back to what we had before. So anytime that you're going to start making changes to the EasyLanguage of any study, save a copy. The way that I do that is File. I'm going to go and click on Save As. Save As takes you to this menu that allows you to provide a name. I'm just going to add, many times when I do indicators here in Masterclass, my prefix is @MC. I know that when I go to my list of studies and I see all the ones that start with @MC, those are the ones we create in class or the ones that I supply to you during class. It's just a prefix. You can use any prefix, but I do recommend that you do pick a prefix so that all your custom studies are grouped together. If you don't use a prefix, if I just leave it on moving average 2 lines, this would be sorted in alphabetical order with everything that's already in my platform. So sometimes it's really difficult if you are creating, multiple EasyLanguage documents to know which ones are the ones you created and which ones are the ones that belong on TradeStation by default. So prefixes are great, and also using a special character, because using a special character makes them, sort to the top of the list. I'm going to click OK. And looking at, let me go and hide my dictionary from the right. Okay, so looking at my inputs, this is something that I do on a lot of the studies that come on TradeStation. There is a tooltip functionality that you can leave it on or you can remove it from your EasyLanguage. This section that you see here right after each one of the inputs, where you start with a square bracket and then end with a square bracket, this whole section that I just highlighted allows you to hover over inputs on the front end and display the information that's here. For example, here the tooltip is enter an EasyLanguage expression to use in calculation of shorter length moving average. If I go over here to TradeStation and I go to my study to edit my study, and I go to the inputs, I can hover over the first input, and this is exactly what shows in there. Enter an EasyLanguage expression. That's called the tooltips. And anytime you hover over an input, it tells you what to put in there. A lot of times, when you're creating custom studies, you don't really need that because it creates a lot of text inside the code. And many times what I want to do is simplify my view. I don't want to make it more complicated. So what I do many times when I am modifying an indicator that is supplied with TradeStation, I get rid of all this information. Just the information that's inside square brackets. I'm not removing all the other stuff. I'm just removing that functionality, which I don't need. And this gives me a more clear view of my inputs and what my study looks like. And another thing that I do, I usually just put my studies, my inputs on the same line. So this allows me to, doesn't matter the spacing, but it allows me to have a little bit more space, and I can look at my input line at the very top and see all the inputs are being used on my study. The same for my variables. I want them to be on one line. Notice that the variables are separated by commas. I see the calculated values for the fast average and the slow average. Notice that it's using the average function, and the function, it needs 2 parameters to calculate. It needs the price that's being used for the calculation. The fast price and the slow price are both the closing price by default, and they show up as inputs because it allows you to create averages on prices, on other prices of the candle. By default, moving averages are calculated on the closing price of the bar, but you can choose another price if you want to. All right. Here we have some syntax on displace. Displace is the ability for EasyLanguage to push an indicator forward or backward than just the current bar. Looking at moving averages, you want to know what they're doing on the current bar. Are they crossing or not? But in some other analysis, you may want to push those moving averages back or forward. That is where the displace comes in handy if you want to move the indicators forward or backward. A lot of times, I don't use the displace. So on this particular indicator, I can take that out. Let me go ahead and remove this. And I can remove the word displace right here next to the plot statement. and I can just put this against my margin here. And here's alert criteria. For this radar screen study, I can use alerts, to filter for any stocks that are crossing at this precise moment, or I can do something different. For this indicator, I'm going to do something different. So let me go ahead and remove all this alert criteria. Let me remove the copyright just to make things simple. So as it is right now, my indicator is just plotting two values, the fast average and the slow average. Let me go ahead and verify this. And my indicator works, or it's verified. I clicked on this little button that verifies the code. By the way, I didn't ask if anybody here was new to EasyLanguage. EasyLanguage is what we use in TradeStation to modify or create custom indicators. I'm going to modify the moving average two-line indicator that I have here on my screen to do something better than what it does by default. Let me go ahead and remove some studies here. Let me remove the description here to allow some more space. I'm going to click on the plus. And I'm going to scroll up to where I see the @MC, which is remember that I renamed the study to @MC moving average two line. I'm going to add it, and I'm just going to click OK. So take a look. I'm looking at the default one, or the one that is supplied with TradeStation, and I'm looking at the one that I just modified. And notice how they're exactly the same, because all the things that I removed are complementary. They don't really control the code in any way for RadarScreen. So I was able to simplify the code, and it allows me to read the code better. It's just it's easier to look at. It doesn't have so many words that I don't need, and still gives me the proper calculation. Next, let me go ahead and go over here to my code, because one of the things that I said at the very beginning is I probably don't need the indicator to tell me the number for the moving average calculation. And if I go back here to RadarScreen, this 3672 for BKNG doesn't mean anything to me. Of course, I can compare the two values to see which is higher or lower, but it would be better if my indicator would tell me exactly if we are bullish or bearish on a particular mode of that moving average. So if I were to click on this symbol, this symbol just had a crossover to the bottom side. Everybody sees that it's happening right now. So right now we are in a bearish mode for this symbol. Really tough to say, just looking at these two numbers. Let me go back here to my EasyLanguage, and I'm going to add a plot 3. And in this plot 3, I'm going to plot what I'm going to call, and this is a custom word that I'm going to introduce to the language. I'm going to, let me call this AVG mode. AVG mode is going to be my word that it's going to hold. What is the mode of this moving average? Is it bearish or bullish? But I'm going to plot that, and I'm going to plot it. And let me just go here and create a label. What I'm entering here inside quotations is the label that allows me to identify which plot is the one that I'm formatting. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let me verify this code. Of course, it's going to highlight AVG mode because I added it. I told you that I was creating or making up that word. It doesn't exist in the language. And when I try to verify, it's going to highlight it and say, I don't recognize this word. So I have to declare it at the top of my code. And this AVG mode is going to be a variable because it's going to have a calculated value. So let me go ahead and type it up here, AVG mode. And inside quotations, this is something really interesting here in this type of indicator that I'm creating. I'm creating what's called a text variable. A lot of the variables in TradeStation are numeric. For example, the fast average calculation and the slow average calculation, notice how they have a 0 in parentheses. That 0 tells EasyLanguage that the variables are numeric, meaning that they hold a number. So when it calculates the fast average and the slow average here below, it knows that the value that is going to be stored in that variable is a number. And we see the numbers plotted on my columns. They're actually numbers when you calculate the moving average. This average mode is going to be a different type of variable. It's going to be a string variable. And the way that we initialize that is putting a set of quotations inside of parentheses. That tells the EasyLanguage that that variable is going to hold text, not a number. It's actually going to hold text. Now, if I click on verify, it's going to highlight plot number 2. Why? Because I made an error. Plot number 2 already exists. I meant to say plot number 3 because they are sequential. If you already have a 1 and a 2, you cannot repeat the number because it'll contradict the plot statement. So this plot 2 needs to be plot 3 instead of 2. And now when I click on verify, this verifies successfully. Notice at the bottom, it says 0 errors. But what I wanted to show you is the label here. If I right click on the code and I go to properties, when I go to the, for example, the chart style, notice how the plots are clearly labeled by the name that you provided. So we have the fast AVG, the slow AVG, and the AVG mode, which is the new one that we provided. So anything that you provide inside quotations as part of the plot statement will become a label right here in the EasyLanguage dialog. All right. One more thing. I don't want the numbers. I already said that. So one way that I can hide certain plots in EasyLanguage without making a big mess or being able to go back and enable them on if I need to is adding a double / at the very beginning of the line. Notice what it does. It turns that line completely green. So it's like commenting that line out. It doesn't read it as EasyLanguage. Now it's just a note that you're making yourself. So anytime that you want to disable certain lines of your code, just put in a double / at the very beginning, and it's going to skip that line altogether. All I want to do is plot the AVG mode, but I need to calculate it. So let me open up some space here and just do a simple comparison. I'm going to say if fast AVG, which is already calculated up here, if the fast AVG is greater than slow AVG, which is what I'm trying to say, if the fast is greater than the slow, then AVG mode equals bullish. You see that? So now I'm setting or assigning the bullish to AVG mode whenever the fast is greater than the slow average. And I can do the other side. If fast AVG is less than slow AVG, then AVG mode equals bearish. Does that make sense? Notice that it's not really difficult. The syntax, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just making some slight modifications. Let me go ahead and verify this. Okay, so verification is successful. If I go back to my TradeStation, here it is. Now you can see that my new indicator doesn't have the numbers anymore because I added that double / and now my indicator is telling me bearish or bullish depending on where the indicators are. And we had already said that for BK and G, the mode was bearish because it was crossing over on the current bar. And we see that crossover happening right now. So in addition to knowing, where the mode is or if it's bearish or bullish, I also want to know when the crossover happened. Is it happening right now? Or how many bars ago did it happen? So that's another thing that I wanted to add to this indicator just to make it a little bit more useful. Because yes, BK and G is telling me that it's bearish, but how long has it been bearish? We know that looking at a chart, it's just happened today where the crossover happened. But it would be interesting to know how many bars ago the actual crossover happened. Rather than turning on the alert, which I would do on the default indicator, I would turn on the alert here on the moving average 2 line and see which ones we're crossing at the moment. What I'm trying to create now is not only giving me the ones that just are crossing right now, but maybe one that crossed yesterday. Maybe a crossover that happened yesterday is as valid as the one that's happening today, or even, 2 trading sessions ago. Maybe that crossover is still significant, and you may want to have that little bit of a wiggle room so that you can say, all right, maybe I'm not looking at crossovers that are happening right now, but let me see the crossovers that happened, in the past 3 days. That's what we're trying to get here. So let's go ahead and take a look at my code. I'm going to remove this moving average to line, which I don't need anymore. And I'm just going to look at this one that I'm creating. I'm going to come over here to my code again. Anytime that you make an error like I did, remember that I had plot 2 in here, and you verify the code, it's going to highlight wherever that error is. And you can go there and try to make some sense out of it. A lot of times, it's not so obvious what the error is, but if you focus and try to think about it a little bit, you may find the answer pretty quickly. Roger, the exclamation mark that you see here in some of these plot statements was it was introduced as new functionality in EasyLanguage for translation, to translate EasyLanguage code into other languages, but we don't use it in I don't use it in my custom indicators. I think eventually the idea was that if we were going to translate EasyLanguage into different languages, we had a way to locate certain lines of code where the new language would be applied. But it's not necessary, so I can come here and remove it if I needed to. But right now, it's not serving a purpose for this code as it is. Okay, so one more thing that I wanted to do. Looking at my indicator, I'm going to enhance the visual by color coding the background based on the bearish and the bullish word. Yeah, it's good that it says bearish and bullish, but sometimes if you have a color, it's a more clear or enhanced visual. Let me go back here and say, if fast average greater than slow average, then average mode equals bullish. I can say, I can do it in the same statement here. So rather than just doing one action, I can use the word begin and say, okay, set the average mode to bullish and set plot BG color of plot 3 to dark blue. And then I'm just going to end this block with an end. Notice what I just did. I created what's called an if-then block statement. How do I do that? Well, if there are multiple actions to be taken, you do a begin, and every begin must have an end. So if the condition is true, and my condition is if the fast average is greater than the slow average, then do these 2 things. Set the average mode to bullish and set the plot BG color of 3. This 3 just references the plot number here. You have to supply what plot number you're changing the color to. And I'm doing it to dark blue here. Let me do the other side, the bearish. So I'm going to add the word begin. Set the average or the AVG mode to bearish and set plot BG color of plot number 3 to dark red. By the way, I'm not sure if you've been to one of my EasyLanguage color classes, but dark blue and dark red are in a list of a category of colors that you can just type in the name of the color, like yellow, blue, cyan, magenta, dark red, dark blue. Those are things that you can type in directly, and EasyLanguage knows what that color is. There's other ways that you can specify colors, like using the My Colors function, or you can use the RGB function, which are a little bit more flexible in terms of giving you the millions of colors that are out there. But these are simple colors that are already built into the language that you can use by just typing them in. Let me verify this one more time. Let me go back here to my code, and here we go. Now we have a little bit more of a visual enhancement. Now it's easier for me to identify which ones are bullish and which ones are bearish. Of course, BKNG is bearish, and if I click on BKR, for example, that is bullish. Take a look at the bullish signal or the bullish mode here on BKR. The crossover happened 1, 2, 3 bars ago. So is that crossover significant? Maybe it is. That's going back to what we talked about. Maybe you want to look at alerts, but with a little bit of a wiggle room where you look not only at what's happening right now, but also things that have happened in the past 2 or 3 days. So let me go ahead and add another component to this indicator that tells me how long ago the crossover happened. Let me go over here to my code. Let's see. Let's do it this way. I'm going to add if fast AVG crosses over slow AVG. Notice that this is the actual crossover. It's not the same thing to say greater than or equal to than to say the crossover. Crossover is a very specific event. It's when you are below the line and then you are above the line the next bar. That is what a crossover is. Or the other way around, you are above the line and then the next bar you're below the line. That is a crossover. So very specific event. I want to be able to reset a counter when the crossover happens. Now, which counter? Well, I can come up here and say, let's see, I'm going to call this cross bars ago equals, maybe let me just simplify the name a little bit. Maybe not. Let me just call it bars ago. Bars ago plus 1. So what I'm doing here is setting up a very simple counter. And if you put in a counter like this somewhere inside your code that is not conditional, meaning that is not inside of an if-then statement, there's no condition associated with this, it'll start a counter at the very beginning of the chart. And every bar, it'll just add 1 to that counter. So on bar number 2, it'll add 1 to 1, and it'll make it 2. And then on the third bar, it'll add another 1. It'll continuously add a 1 to the counter, and it'll keep track of how many bars have passed. When the crossover happens, though, I want to reset that counter. I want the indicator to tell me, hey, this is 0 now. Why? Because that way you can identify the ones that are crossing right now. So whenever there is a crossover, then bars ago equals 0. And on the other side, if fast AVG crosses under slow AVG, then bars ago equals 0. Resetting the counter. One thing that I haven't done is I haven't declared this word. This is a word that I made up. I started, typing cross bars ago and I wanted to shorten it, but still, it's a word that I'm making up and I'm introducing in the language as new. So if that's the case, you have to come in here and assign it or declare it as a variable. This will be bars ago. And what type of variable this is? It's going to be a numeric. It's going to hold a straight number. So the way that we initialize the variable is with the parentheses 0. Here in this indicator, we have those two types. We have the numeric and we have the text variable. All right. So at this point, all I need to do is plot my counter. I'm going to come over here in my plot statement, plot for bars ago, and I'm going to do a label that says bars ago. Okay, let me see some of the questions here that are coming through. Mohammed is asking, can you add commit all the way on top to remember what is it for? Or a comment? For sure. Yes, exactly. We could. And as you're writing code, a lot of times you may forget the reasoning behind something that you wrote. So for example, if you want to add a little note here and say, every note in TradeStation starts with a double / and say, this is a counter that adds 1 to the running total. And whatever that node is going to be, and you can say another note here. Remember, double slashes, this resets the counter to 0 when a crossover happens. So those notes are very handy. And to your point, yes, make sure that you put in notes anytime that you're writing your code so that you always remember what the reasoning was behind putting it that way. Are there any ready templates in EasyLanguage? Yes, for sure. When you create a new indicator, I'm going to go here to the new dropdown and I go to indicator. You have some templates here. You have a 1 plot, 3 plot. So there's templates that you can use when you create a new indicator that you are welcome to use. I find that the indicators that are already, supplied with the TradeStation platform are very handy in knowing, the structure of EasyLanguage and how things should be set up. Let me verify this and take a look at my study because I want to talk about a few things. So I have my study here. I have my AVG mode and I have my bars ago. But if I look at my bars ago, I see something odd. I don't see a number that is higher than 3. I see some 1s and I see some 3s. The reason for that, and this is something that you have to be aware of when looking at RadarScreen studies. When you create a study in RadarScreen, it's going to use as little data as it needs to provide a calculated or the calculation on the value that you're plotting. In this case, yes, we're asking it to keep track of a counter, which doesn't really, it doesn't really specify how many bars back do you need to be able to calculate. RadarScreen says, well, I only need 2 or 3 bars in order to give you a number. So that's as much as I'm going to give you. And that's exactly what RadarScreen does. It's going to give you it's going to calculate with the least amount of data possible so that it becomes more efficient. But for this type of indicator that's keeping track of how many bars ago something happened, you want to make sure that you provide enough data so that it's able to keep track of that counter. If I go to the settings of this indicator, I'm going to right click, go to studies, and I'm going to edit the moving average for all symbols. If I go to the general tab, take a look at this setting that says load additional data for accumulative calculations. Well, a counter is that type of calculation, is accumulative. And if we don't provide enough data, it's not going to give us a realistic number. Notice the additional bars to load was 2. That explains why the maximum number is 3. It is using the current bar and 2 additional historical bars. So the maximum that it can plot is 3. So you have to come in here and make sure that you supply enough data so that it keeps track of, the highest number. I'm going to add 100. 100 may be a little bit too much, or not. I'm going to see it in just a moment. Let me go ahead and click OK. And there you can see the numbers coming through. So for example, let me go ahead and remove these 2 top symbols. For Apple, let me go ahead and look at Apple. If I look at Apple, I can see that the moving averages are bearish and the crossover happened 14 bars ago. See how cool that is? One thing that I want to do on this indicator too is to remove the decimal places. Since it's a counter that should be looking at integers, I'm just going to right click and go to studies and do it on the front end. Here on the style, I'm going to select the bars ago. It's a number, but I'm going to drop the decimals to 0. I'm going to click OK. And this, you can see that we have numbers without decimals. Now, of course, I did it on this particular version that is applied to my RadarScreen. If I want to do that as a default in EasyLanguage or for this indicator, every time that is used, just right click and go to properties. You do it on the properties of the indicator. Like, for example, if I go to the general tab, notice that the 100 bars that we provided it are not here, are not in the default, in the actual EasyLanguage code. So rather than doing it how I did it just a moment ago, like in the front end where I added that number, do it here in EasyLanguage so that you don't have to do it every single time you're going to add the study. If I do it here on the EasyLanguage side, then it'll always remember that it needs to load 100 bars for the calculation. The same for the grid style. If I go to grid style and I go to bars ago, I can set it to number and drop that to 0 so that it's always like that. I'm going to click OK and verify it one more time. Let's go back to TradeStation. So now I see my indicator, which to me, it's a little bit more useful. Now, if I wanted to see something that is crossing right now, I would look at something that has a 0. For example, AZN, I'm going to click it and notice how the moving averages are crossing right now. So anything that has a 0, it's something that is happening right now. Anything that has a 1 is because it happened 1 bar ago. So now that you have this, you can filter your radar screen using those numbers and say, well, let me filter the NASDAQ 100 list of symbols and say, give me the ones. Let me go ahead and you have 2 moving averages. Let me just take a step back because I wanted to explain why is it that you have 2 moving averages listed here. Is because you have 2 plots. I know it's not, they should make this little box a little bit bigger, but you can see a partial of the name of the plot, AVG, which is AVG mode. And then you see bars here, which is bars ago. So just be aware that depending on the number of plots you have in an indicator, you're going to have that indicator show up that many times in this dropdown. Just make sure that you select the right plot. I'm going to select bars ago. Let me do that one more time. Bars ago. And I'm going to say, show me the ones that are less than 4. And here we go. So out of the 100 symbols that make up the NASDAQ, which is a symbol list that I added here, I see a total of 27 symbols that have crossed, not today only, or yesterday only, but on the past 3 days, 4 days to be exact, because we have 0, 1, 2, and 3. If you look at something that crossed 3 days ago, like MNST, let me go ahead and click it. You can see the crossover happened 4 days ago. Not a clear, crossover here since we had one in the opposite direction a few bars before that. But still, you get the idea. Now we're looking at an indicator differently and wanting to make modifications to it. And this is something you can do on any study that is supplied with the TradeStation platform. Let's see, what else can we do here? Moving average ribbon. Now let's go to studies, add studies, and moving average ribbon. It's this one right here, the moving average exponential ribbon. I'm going to click OK, and this is what it looks like. Any study in TradeStation, you can very quickly right-click on the study and go to Edit EasyLanguage for that study. Makes it very quick for you to open up the code and see what it looks like. Let's see what this ribbon looks like. All right, we have a whole section of notes up here. I didn't mention this, but right here at the very top, you see a big section in green. If you want to make comments that are longer than just one line, you can put those comments inside of squiggly brackets or French brackets. If you put all the text inside those brackets, then everything that's inside, it'll be considered a comment or a note. I see the inputs over here. Let me see if there's any alerting going on. It has all the plot statements, which are exponential moving averages. And you're right, it doesn't have alert criteria. This calculates a series of exponential moving averages and then just puts them all together in one screen. So the question here is, what would you consider the trigger on this particular indicator? Would it be when all the indicators cross to the other side? For example, if you look at, where my yellow or this yellow line is, which is the one that is the fastest exponential moving average. And on this series of bars, it actually moved all the way to the very top. So is it when that one crosses all the way to the top, or is it waiting for all the remaining ones to actually cross to the top side? So we would have to wait until this area for all the moving averages to cross to the other side. Now, those are some of the things that you have to evaluate and determine when is it that I want the alert? Do I want it right here when the fast crosses above the slowest, or the fastest crosses above the slowest? Or do I want it here when the second fastest or the third fastest? So those are things that you have to specify and determine where do you want that alert. And based on that determination, then you go into your code. The alert criteria is very simple. All you need to do is, if this and this happens, then alert. That's all you need in EasyLanguage to trigger that alert. The word alert in EasyLanguage knows exactly what it needs to do, and it just to trigger whatever configuration you have specified, whether it's a pop-up message or a sound, it'll be triggered by just your alert message. So let's say that any of you are working on modifying EasyLanguage and all of a sudden you need help. A lot of times, not everything is so obvious as some of the things that we've talked about here. You may get stuck in modifying certain things, or you're trying to accomplish certain things you're not very versed on. We have a whole team that is looking at questions on EasyLanguage. I'm not sure if everyone here is aware of this, but we have the EasyLanguage forums. Let me go ahead and pull them up here on my screen so you know where to ask questions. The TradeStation website. All right, you're going to have to go into the Client Center, so sign in. So once you are in the Client Center, go to Support right here on the very far right on the green bar. Scroll down a little until you see the section for Community, and you have the TradeStation and EasyLanguage support. If I click there, I can create a new post, and everybody's welcome to do this, a new topic. If you have any question on EasyLanguage, change the category to an EasyLanguage question, and then post your question. There's hundreds, thousands of different posts in here. So rather than creating a post of your own, try searching first and see if you find anything related to what you've found or what you're looking for. Okay. All right. That's my class for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember that we do master classes every single Tuesday at 11 a.m. Keep an eye on the schedule. The events are posted on events on the TradeStation events page. So look at all the topics that are upcoming, and if anything catches your attention, feel free to register. Thank you so much for your time. Yes, I can make the code available. Send me an email if you want the code. Send an email to education@tradestation.com, and I'll be glad to provide that code that we worked on today. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon. I'll see everyone this afternoon at 2 p.m. on that options presentation. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great day.